Welcome everybody on this webinar regarding the new BIMcollab ZOOM with lists, data extraction reinvented. I am your host for today, Christian Dalhuizen. I am a BIMcollab product manager. I will be running through some of the nice new features that we've added to our platform today. So let's get started. We will have 45 minutes to go over everything. So let's go. First of all, this question: what would you need for a successful BIM process in your projects? Just a few topics here. So it would be nice that you collect all your model information in a central location so that everyone knows where to collect the data from, to share the data to, and that this information is synchronized in your team. It's also about sharing your requirements for BIM models. So what would you like to see for your specific needs? So have a sort of information delivery manual. Also create an execution plan where you can say, well, where do we store the models and which applications do we use? And also, what do we require from our models to be able to do our tasks? Of course, this does not come naturally, so it's mostly work in progress. So those requirements can be checked and validated using different applications or tools, or just your expert knowledge to check those models. You also want to track and coordinate any issues that come from these validations to be able to get them solved by assigning them to people, check on their statuses, putting them in a sort of planning milestone so that you will know that issues are solved to go to a next phase. Once everything is done and your requirements are set and met, it's also very helpful to extract and share that validated information with each other. So not only about the geometry or dimensions, but also about the information inside of these models. And of course, you also want to report on progress in all of these different aspects. So for our new list release, we have changed our approach to creating a federated model, and we tie it more into the structure of projects, which is, in our vision, much more logical and easier approach. So let's talk about model federation first. So model federation in Zoom can work with a project folder. This folder can be set up by several users with the correct rights to this approach. Also, you can share that with other team members quite easily through the cloud. So people do not have to guess or search for specific models that they will want to use, especially when running from a sort of single source. This is very helpful because everyone has all the models at hand, and also that they are always up to date and you're working on the latest information shared in your project. So it's very flexible and easy, as I will show you in a minute. It works very practically. It can work from a local machine, a network, or also include file sharing solutions. It's very easy to update. Your models will also be in sync, and you can even combine our cloud approach with a personalized setup. So moving to the next slide, you can see that now we have a project folder definition where you can select a folder. This can be on your local machine or local area network, but you can also use a shared folder solution. And then you have to think about platforms like OneDrive, Dropbox Business, or you can even use the tools included with common data environments like the BIM 360 desktop connector or Trimble Connect Sync, which will actually mirror files directly from the common data environment to your local machine. This is of course also helpful because you can work in a sort of on or offline situation because you have the files on your local machine. You're not totally reliant on a cloud connection this way. So after selecting the main project folder, you can designate several folders for your federation. So these are the models where folders where models are shared. So even if you add models to these folders, they will be automatically added to the federation. And this can be set up from any one of the Zoom tools and then shared through the cloud. And from the projects, other users only need to connect to collect the federation and can load or unload models as they see fit. So let's go through a demo of this. I will switch to Zoom on my Mac partition, and I will switch in a minute to my Zoom on Windows. So first of all, I want to connect to a project. So I have a project prepared where we can connect to. So as you can see, there's a cloud icon. So now I am connected, and I'm not only connected for the issues, but I can also now connect using our project folder. So in this case, I will point to my Dropbox business folder where I have a project folder set up. And from that project folder, I can select the specific folders where I want to federate my models from. So in this case, I can start with an architectural, an MEP, and a structural folder and click on share. So as you can see, Zoom quickly finds all the files in those folders. And now I can start with giving my project a little bit of a structure by adding prefixes to designate any disciplines or traits. So in this case, this would be the architectural models and also the structural models. If I click on sync, this will be stored in your BIMcollab projects. And if I switch to Windows, I can also access the same project just by simply connecting to that same project. So once connected, it will ask me to designate my folder if the setup on my machine is a little bit different. So if I now share this, you can also see that all the structure that I have put in place and also the models that we are going to work on are now accessible here. Any user can decide to load models from this federation, so you do not need to use all of them. Multiple stakeholders can use different models. So in this case, this team member is using the structural files, and from another Zoom, I can load the architectural files separately. So to combine this approach on cloud, so being in sync, but also being able to do my personal work, so I'm not totally reliant on the federation I set up here, I can still go to add to projects and load any specific file that I wish to run for myself separately. So I can run a model check on this. I can do some preliminary testing on lists or extract data from it without this being shared to the rest of the team. Of course, if I want to share my models, I can also put them in the designated project folder, OneDrive or Dropbox Business, and then it will be synchronized automatically with other team members. So for now, I will remove this. If you have created any type of mistake or you want to resort something, it's very easily changed either from this Zoom or any other Zoom. So let's go back to my slides. So this was the model federation or the project folder. Moving on to like our main topic for today, data extraction reinvented. So if we look at the topic of creating lists and what would be the added value of adding this to our BIMcollab workflow, we can first have an example for a main contractor that might want to extract key values to do tenders, or they want to sort in batches or work packaging. and have those values defined. An engineer can create a bill of materials. They can sort elements on part numbering and such to create quantity lists. A designer might want to extract materials so that he knows during his design process, for instance, how many carbon heavy materials are in his design. And he can also use that to define the design even better. Of course, other data like sort areas on specific levels or other type of thing that can also be done with lists. A facility manager might want to extract elements for maintenance, sort on server states if they are in the model. So all in all, the application of lists is very broad and extensive. What we want to offer also for users is that you can have lists that go into very specific detail for the experts in the project, but you can also share on a higher level so that management can also be included in the progress in projects based on the values. So that this can be used to have data-driven decisions. So will we enter this tender, or do we want to put in a sort of pricing for our subcontractor work, or can a designer say, well, I want to change the use of materials in the building because it does not meet my sustainability goals. So the next that I want to discuss is that I want to make a distinction between schedules in general and Zoom lists. So of course, there are a lot of applications that already can create very intelligent schedules. So an architect might use his tool to create door and window schedules. Another one can try to make columns or structural walls and make a list for that. Tekla can create steel beams lists, rebar, duct and piping from another application. But this is all from the native software. And if you look at the lists created on IFC deliverables, it actually uses the federation of files to create any kind of list that the user wants. So it's not defined by one of the stakeholders. No, you can take all of the models combined and extract any kind of data in shape or form that you would want to see. So how does that work? I will go to the different types that we offer. Lists offer 3 types of data extraction. The first is the most common, the property table, where you can have overviews of multiple components, the number of components, multiple values. But on top of that, we also added a pivot grid that allows you to search and sort your data and structure your data based on columns and rows, which is, in our view, very effective to work with complex information. And the last is dashboard data that even allows data to be shared through BIMcollab to other platforms. So in this case, a dashboard data object would be used to put data in the cloud and be synchronized with Power BI dashboards. So how to create lists? The first step would be that you define list sets. So to structure your list that you create, which could be 10 or hundreds of them, you can create sort of list sets or folders. These have titles and descriptions so that they are easily recognized, and you can also explain some of its usage. And you can store the definition in either your local machine or on shared on the BIMcollab cloud. So I will demonstrate this shortly. So I'm now in one of the Zooms that I have started. And as you can see, there is a new tab called Lists. And from lists, you can see that there is a shared option or a local option. So similarly to our smart views, which can be created local and then shared on the cloud for other team members to use, which can also be applied for sharing your class rules with other stakeholders. And in this case, we can also do a similar feed for lists. So if I click on the plus sign, I can add a list and a description. So in this case, I will say, well, this is one for property tables. And I can have a description. Of course, I will also make, I will make one set for the pivot grids. And also one for dashboard data. So these list sets can be shared quite easily. So I just have to sync, as I do also for issues and other elements within Zoom. And if I go to my other application, the only thing that I will need to do for now is either connect or refresh, synchronize if I am already have the project open. So as you can see, other users now also can see my property tables with the descriptions and the titles. If there is a typo, I can also, if I have access rights from this computer, I can also add more data to that and also share that back to the other Zoom users. So very easy to use. Of course, you can also create them locally and just share them by dragging and dropping them to shared. It's also an option, but it's very helpful that you can structure and manage specific data this way. So the next step would be to actually create the list themselves. So as I've mentioned, we have several options to create lists. So you would want to choose a list type first. Then we have a filter option that works similarly to our smart views. So you can filter out specific elements like windows or doors, or windows and doors, or separate walls, and then even color code them with the same technology that we use for smart views. The next step would be to select from the federation, the model federation, all the properties that you want to list and all the values that you want to count, add them to the list. And then, of course, the next, last step would be to run to extract that data. So I will start by creating a property table. So in this case, I will just add a list. And in this model, there are several items available to me, especially for the interior walls that have manufacturer's information attached. So I will make a list for one of the suppliers, a company called Knauf, which is inside of this model. So I will select a property table and I will start filtering out the objects that I want to have in my list. So let's select the manufacturer parameter and say that if it contains the name of the manufacturer, then it's added to my view and the list. I can even add those auto coloring options. So if I want to color code based on a specific type, I can set that to an auto color, and it will color code automatically different types in this list and in the viewpoint. So from then on, I can use the properties here to select specific values or quantities. So I can say, well, I want to have the gross volume. Maybe I want to have a fire rating also attached here. And of course, I also want to have the manufacturer's information in the list. So now it's set up. It's in my set. And if I run it, you can see that the information is now put into this list. And I can also use this option to merge uniform rows so that similar items are put into one column and count it. And as you can see, I can interact with the data simply by clicking on one of these cells, which will show me the 68 elements of this particular type from this manufacturer. So because we are based on open standards, then this process is similar if you want to include multiple manufacturers. So I've just made a duplicate for this because there is also another supplier here. Just let me write that correctly. The only thing that I would need to change is actually the filter used. So in this case, I will just type the name for this other manufacturer, save that, use the same kind of setup. And as you can already see, if I double click, it will automatically already color code the components from this supplier and also give me an overview of all the data that I've put into this table. Another example that I want to show you is the ability to use pivot grids. So I will use this set for that. So let me just create a title for this. I want to separate all the areas based on their type, based on apartment type, and extract also their build numbers. So we're not going to use a property table now. We're going to use the pivot grid option. And just as before, I can filter out specific elements and color code them. So in this case, that would be spaces with a category assigned. And if it's the category rooms in this case, I can add them to the list and the viewpoint. So I'm going to turn on the spaces here. So they're all a little bit gray. So I also want to have more definition here. So what I'm going to do is if there is a long name, in this case, if it's defined, I want to auto color that. So now they are all auto colored. Just going to duplicate this one to also add some transparency to these elements. So this is the way that I want to filter and visualize them. And then I can start by adding some specific values that I want to use in my pivot grid. So the first would be the long name. The next one would also be an IFC element to count them. I can also use the gross volume or the net floor area here. And I will also pick some other values from this model, such as the zone name, zone name 2, and object type. So let's save this. And I can run this information and then start setting up my property table. So I have all of these values. So I will start by using the long name in a row, then use the object type on the columns, and I can count the net floor area, which is already put into this field. So now I can start playing with this. So let's also take the gross volume, and I want to count any individual IFC elements. And in this case, I also want to have the zone name attached here. And the zone name 2, I will put into the columns. So just by dragging and dropping, I can create a list that suits my needs. So in this case, I will use the zone name in the columns and the zone name on this level. And now you can see that there's also these drop downs, which I can also use to dig deeper in this information. So zone name is actually the build number. And zone object type is the type of apartments. So what I've done now, so I have all the apartment types in the model specified according to their name. So I can click on any of these levels to see all of the types in the project. If I want to drill deeper, and look at the specific apartment numbers, I can select them as well. And here I have the category for these types of rooms, and then there's specific names below that. If I don't want to see everything right away, I can also select a couple. So in this case, I will just focus on apartment types A, which will give me this list and a grand total. And as you can see, if I click on a apartment type, I will receive the values for all of them. And if I dig deeper, it will also change to reflect only this apartment, which of course can also be combined with this floor plan information to see where those build numbers are actually located. So yeah, you can imagine that you can also do this for maybe the sets of columns or serviceable objects in buildings. Just by having to drag and drop them, you can easily sort and find these relationships. So I want to move on to the next topic, because now I have that information for myself, but I'm not alone. I want to collaborate because I'm working on BIMcollab. So I also want to share these results with other people in the project. So sharing lists and results can be done directly from Zoom. So you can share the list definitions with the team so that they can also run their own lists. If you set them up generically, you can reuse the lists from one project to another. So if you use a good information delivery manual for your project, then the values will always be in the same position. So you can reuse the lists and change them or customize them in specific projects, of course. So if you run the list, you will see the results as I've shown you earlier. And there's also a share option that you can share those results not only with other Zoom users, but also with users from the BIMcollab cloud. So after sharing, any one of the connected team members using Zoom or Zoom free can access these same values. They can interact with the information, so they can also click on the cells in the lists, interact with that, view the spaces that you sorted, etc. And even after you shared them, you can also access the data from the web environment. So in this case, you can also see the area list, with also the drill down per building type and building number. So this can also be used directly in projects. So anything that you shared can be viewed from anywhere. So actually working or collaborating on the shared information, which can also drive decisions in the process or in the execution of specific tasks. So let me just show you about the sharing. So first of all, I will share the manufacturers list here, so I can share the results. I also want to share, of course, all of these lists. Let me just share all of these real quick. So moving to another Zoom, I can just simply synchronize to get all those lists. So as you can see, the property table and also the pivot grid are now here. And I can use the shared results to actually display it here in my model. So before I can do this, I will activate the architectural model first. So there's also a sort of layered approach. So you can give people the right to run on the active models or just view the shared results. So there are active model results where you can also regenerate if there are revisions, and these are the shared results as they were posted by other users. So as you can see, I can also run them here because I have access rights. I can also use this Excel export, comma separated values, or PDF export for this list. And if I also go to the pivot grids, you can also see that this user also has access here and can use the list in his model or her model. So the next thing that I want to show you is not only did we share this with other team members on the cloud and can be used in Zoom, I can also go to the project that I've set up, which now also includes a page called lists. And on this page, you can see that the data, or sorry, the list sets are available. So I can check the information from the manufacturers. I can also go to the pivot grids, which can also be used in a similar way. So you can drill down into specific build numbers. You can have it sorted by category or specific room. So all helpful information, which can also be updated very quickly. So if there is any change in your models, the federation is updated, the list can be rerun and reshared, and everyone has the information at hand again. So one of the last things to cover is that we can do this in detail, like I've showed you, but we can also do it on a more abstract level to maybe get more insights on a management level. For a lot of our customers, they already use Power BI in their issue management on BIMcollab. So sharing issue numbers, statuses for issues, number of users connected to those issues, which is very powerful, of course, for the issue management process. But we can also do this for the data that we extract from our models. So on BIMcollab, we already predefined a connector for you. So the only thing you need to do is actually create dashboard data, which can be generated just as we created the other lists. And these can be read by other applications like Power BI. So just changing the type to dashboard data and synchronizing that. We'll put that in the BIMcollab database, and the Power BI connector, which is free for download. You can install that in Power BI. You just create a data link, collect the data from BIMcollab, select the project and the dashboard data object. In this case, I have an example of prefabricated walls from a concrete manufacturer. So once the data is selected, you can use that data to set up your dashboards in any shape or form. And of course, the data is linked. If the revisions are there or the dashboard data is updated, it automatically updates within your dashboards as well to give you almost real-time view of the data inside your projects. So let's do a quick demonstration for this. So I will use Zoom real quick to show you that it's now very easy to connect to a different project. So if I just click on the list project here, it will automatically connect to my other project, and it will load the corresponding federation as well. Let's take a little bit longer than expected. Okay, let's just go to this federation. So in this model, I have a federation, and there's also some models that are shared here. So let me just load one of these models here. So this is a model from prefabricated concrete, including a lot of components, which I have extracted here already by creating some of the lists. So a list for the rebar in this project, the walls with some of the attributes like quality of the concrete or the steel or the thickness of these walls, which I can of course visualize by just clicking on these rows. Another example could be these columns or staircases. and that information will grow if I load more models. So I just load this extra model as well. So when the models come in, I can just refresh the data and see the new values. So more staircases, more columns, more walls, more rebar. And I can use that data to share to Power BI. So for just these walls, I've created this dashboard data object. So instead of a pivot property table, I can use dashboard data and save that. So if I run this and share it, it's now on Power BI. So let's start up Power BI with the dashboard that I created quickly. So in this example, I have just 3 views on the data. So one from a layer designation, this is a classification code, and this is just a total summary. So you can drill down with Power BI in any one of these values, and you can also see the results on the other visualization of this data. So let's just add some more models. So I will include the rest of the models here as well. So it's already done. And of course, if I go back to my list and rerun it, you will see that this information has changed. So it's have grown. There are multiple other components that have been added here. So if I now click on share, the information is already in the cloud, and I can use the refresh option here to refresh the data directly in Power BI. So as you can see, there is more information available. There are a lot more walls here in this model. And as you can see, yeah, the number of total weight has increased quite substantially. So effectively, you have a sort of live dashboard where when information comes in, you can immediately see the consequences within your projects. So this is just a quick example. Of course, I can dream of some other processes, but I think you in projects can have also some kind of understanding, or maybe already see some ideas on how this can be used very effectively. So I want to end this presentation with a sort of overview of what BIMcollab can offer you, including, of course, the sharing of data and the extraction of it. But if you look at everything from the first step, so federating your models, having a very lightweight entry, easy entry into federating the models, and also to keep that synchronized across your team. We can already share requirements by dragging them to the BIMcollab cloud, and other people can check for their information. We can run clash detection, do model validation. Next to that, of course, the BIMcollab issue cloud platform offers issue management. So everything from tracking statuses, reporting, doing analytics, and directly communicating that to BIM tools for creating the solutions and revisions necessary. We now also include the data extraction, so visualizing that in the project, sharing that with team members, but also sharing that data on other platforms like Power BI or our web dashboards. So all in all, I think that our proposition in projects is quite substantial. It can be a good basis to work from, and you can even add other kinds of applications to this if you want to dive more deeply into, let's say, model checking with Solibri Model Checker, or if you have other applications, because we are such an open platform, you can also combine that. But essentially, BIMcollab offers everything you would need to run this project, and you can go even further by adding more and more tools to this process. So for me, there's only left to see if you need more help. So we are here. If you want to have a consultancy meeting to discuss what these features or an implementation of BIMcollab would mean for your company, we're happy to do so. You can also request a trial if you don't have the software already, so that you can try out these new features and extract data and share that. If you need help with setting up your account, we're also available. So if you already have Zoom and you want to implement this, or maybe want to expand the use of it, we're also happy to assist there. And just for generic questions, you can always go to BIMcollab.com or contact us on this email address. So for now, I want to thank you for attending. We will keep the lines open for a couple of minutes, so you can still ask some questions if that came up during this webinar. Of course, this is a recorded webinar. We will be sending you the link to this shortly. That's it for me for now. Please just keep asking your questions. Me and my colleagues will try to answer them for you. And I wish you a very good day. And hopefully we'll see you on BIMcollab. Thank you all.